Japan has reportedly rejected a European Union proposal to use frozen Russian sovereign assets to help plug Ukraine's massive budget deficit. Brussels has been pushing a so-called reparation loan, a financing mechanism backed by Russian funds immobilized in the West. Moscow has denounced the move as outright theft. Belgium, which holds the bulk of the frozen money through the Euroclear clearinghouse, has so far refused to approve the plan. Belgian Prime Minister Bart de Wever insists the European Commission needs broader international backing, especially from non-EU countries holding Russian assets, to share the legal and financial risks. He described the proposal as the effective confiscation of a foreign state's funds. But at a meeting of G7 finance ministers on Monday, Japan's representative Satsuki Katayama made it clear Tokyo would not support the initiative, citing legal constraints. According to EU diplomatic sources, speaking to Politico, Japan's position appears aligned with that of the United States, which also opposes the EU plan and views the frozen assets as crucial leverage in negotiations with Moscow. France has reportedly also declined to touch Russian assets held on its soil. Meanwhile, Canada and the UK have signaled they may participate if the EU ultimately proceeds.
Europe's push to fund Ukraine with frozen Russian assets hit a major roadblock this week, and the resistance came from inside the bloc. France, a key supporter of the broader reparations loan, refused to let Brussels tap Russian assets held in its private banks, according to the Financial Times. French officials told the paper that private credit institutions cannot be treated like Belgium's Euroclear, which operates under different legal obligations. And sources said French banks simply did not want to enter any discussion about transferring Russian assets to Kyiv. Across Europe, nearly 210 billion euros in Russian sovereign assets remain frozen. Of that, 185 billion euros sits inside Belgium's Euroclear depository. But an estimated 25 billion euros is scattered through private institutions, including France's banks, which hold around 18 billion euros, the second highest total in the EU, FT reported. The names of the banks remain confidential, adding another layer of political sensitivity as negotiations continue. A day earlier, the Kremlin sharply condemned Brussels' attempts to seize or redirect Russian funds. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov called the move a phenomenal situation, adding that even the IMF had privately urged the EU to come to its senses before damaging the international monetary system. Peskov also praised Belgium's sensible stance after Brussels objected to parts of the EU's plan, warning of serious legal and financial consequences.
In fact, the European capitals and the European Commission still believe that the war should continue to be paid for with Russian money. The Belgians quite reasonably say, listen, we will fully bear both national and personal full legal accountability and responsibility for these specific actions and their consequences. Give us guarantees. No one wants to share responsibility with them, but everyone really wants the money. These funds they're talking about in principle are just about enough to keep spending Ukrainians like bullets for a couple more years. But we hear, for example, today there was a statement from the International Monetary Fund where they speak about this topic very, very cautiously and urge that such steps in no way have a negative impact on the international financial system. So even the IMF, and what is the IMF? It's something they created. It's the foundation of monetary policy of the monetary world. And now it turns out that this very foundation is speaking out against its own creators and saying, come to your senses. It's a phenomenal situation. It's been a long time since anything like this has happened.
With disagreements widening, European leaders are exploring new ways to finance Ukraine, especially as Washington signals a desire to accelerate an endgame to the war. The EU's proposal currently hinges on issuing a loan to Kyiv, which would eventually be repaid through future Russian reparations. But Belgium objected, citing major legal risks and long-term repercussions for Western financial credibility. Several EU capitals now acknowledge that any aggressive plan risks triggering lawsuits, retaliation, or precedent-setting shocks to global markets. The debate comes as Ukraine faces mounting financial strain after 3 years of war. EU insists the funding is vital for Kyiv's survival, but long-standing questions remain unresolved. Who bears the legal liability, whether private banks can be forced into compliance, and whether Russian assets can be redirected without destabilizing global norms. For now, Europe appears divided. France is standing firm, Belgium is cautioning restraint, and Moscow is warning that the West is stepping into previously untested financial territory.